You know, there was a time when no one was married. No rings, no vows, no ceremony. Just bodies, seasons, and the next sunrise. For most of human history, there was no word for husband, no word for wife. There was only stay or go. And then something changed. Something so fundamental that it built every civilization that followed. This is the story of the first marriage, not the first wedding. The first time two humans looked at each other and decided that tomorrow would be different because they would face it together. And more importantly, the first time their tribe agreed that this decision mattered. Because before marriage was about love, it was about survival. Before it was sacred, it was practical. And before anyone stood before a crowd and made a promise, someone, somewhere, had to invent the idea that a promise between two people was worth keeping at all. To understand how we got here, we have to go back. Way back, to a world before promises existed. Imagine the Earth, roughly 2 million years ago. Our ancestors are not quite human yet. They are small, hairy, and constantly moving. There is no language as we know it, no tools beyond a sharp rock, and absolutely no concept that two individuals should stay together beyond the act of mating itself. For most primates, this is enough. A female chimpanzee in heat will mate with multiple males in a single day. There is no jealousy, no loyalty, no pair bond. The males compete, the female chooses, and then everyone moves on. This is the default setting of nature. And for a very long time, it was our default too. But somewhere along the line, we broke the pattern. And the reason why might surprise you. It wasn't because of love, it wasn't because of religion. It was because of grandmothers. Around 2 million years ago, the environment began to change. Forests shrank, grasslands expanded. The food that our ancestors relied on became harder to reach. Buried tubers, tough roots, and scattered nuts required more effort to collect than the fruit that once hung within arm's reach. This was a problem for young children. They couldn't dig, they couldn't forage efficiently, and their mothers were busy. A female early human could have a new baby roughly every 3 to 4 years, but each baby needed years of care before it could feed itself. So who was feeding the weaned children while their mothers nursed the newborns? The answer changed everything. Older women, past their own childbearing years, began helping feed their grandchildren. This might sound simple, but it was revolutionary, because the more a grandmother helped, the sooner her daughter could have another baby. The more babies that survived, the more common grandmother genes became. Over thousands of generations, human lifespan began to stretch. Women started living decades beyond their fertile years, and that created a problem no other primate had faced before. Too many old men. As human lifespans grew longer, something unexpected happened. Women's fertility still ended around age 45, but men could remain fertile well into their 60s, 70s, even later. The ratio of fertile men to fertile women began to skew. More men, fewer available women. And when competition for mates becomes fierce, the math changes. A male who spends his energy fighting off rivals for every mating opportunity might win some battles. But a male who guards one female, stays with her, and ensures that her children are his children, might win the war. This is called mate guarding, and it is the biological seed from which pair bonding grew. Not romance, not poetry, simple arithmetic. More competitors meant it was smarter to hold on to one partner than to risk losing every fight. But biology is only half the story, because somewhere between guarding a mate and building a life together, something else emerged, a feeling. And that feeling needed a structure. By the time anatomically modern humans appeared, roughly 300,000 years ago, pair bonds were likely already common. We know this from burial sites. In the Italian village of Valdaro, archaeologists found a Neolithic burial where 2 skeletons were locked in an embrace. In Aleppo Tripa cave in Greece, 5,800-year-old skeletons were found with their arms and legs interlocked. In Rocky Garhi, in the ancient Harappan civilization, a young couple was buried together, facing each other. These are not random arrangements. Someone cared enough to place them side by side for eternity. But a pair bond is not yet a marriage. A couple who sleeps in the same shelter is not the same as a couple whose union is recognized by their entire community. The gap between two people choosing each other and a tribe enforcing that choice is where our story truly begins. Because marriage at its core is not a private decision. It is a public contract, and contracts require witnesses. For most of human existence, we lived in small bands, 30 to 50 people. Everyone knew everyone. There were no laws, no courts, no written records. If two people wanted to be together, they simply were. But as populations grew, as tribes began to meet and trade and occasionally fight, something new became necessary, a way to formalize who belonged to whom. Not for love, for land, for labor, for alliances. The first marriages were business deals, and the first evidence we have of this comes from a place that invented writing itself. The earliest recorded evidence of a marriage ceremony, uniting one man and one woman, dates to approximately 2350 BCE, in ancient Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization. Here, between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, the Sumerians had built cities, invented the wheel, and created cuneiform writing. And among the hundreds of thousands of clay tablets they left behind, some of the most common documents were marriage contracts. These were not romantic letters, they were legal agreements, signed by the father of the bride and the father of the groom, in front of witnesses. The bride and groom themselves often had nothing to do with the proceedings. In the Sumerian language, the word for love was a compound verb that literally meant to measure the earth, to mark off land. Think about that. For the Sumerians, love and property were the same word. Marriage was fundamentally a business arrangement, designed to assure and perpetuate an orderly society. Its prime intent was not companionship, it was procreation. Not personal happiness in the present, but communal continuity for the future. In ancient Mesopotamia, a marriage had 5 steps. Each one had to be observed exactly, or the union was not valid. First, the engagement contract. Second, the bride price paid by the groom's family to the bride's father. The wedding feast. Fourth, the bride moving to her father-in-law's home. And fifth, the wedding night, with the expectation that the bride would become pregnant. The bride price was serious money. In the Old Babylonian period, a normal wife cost about 10 shekels of silver. By the time of Hammurabi, around 1750 BCE, prices had doubled or tripled, and the penalties for backing out were severe. If a suitor changed his mind, he lost his entire deposit. If the bride's father changed his mind, he had to pay the suitor double. And if a rival suitor convinced the father to switch, the rival was banned from marrying the daughter entirely. These were not suggestions, these were laws, carved into stone, and they reveal something crucial about the first marriages. They were not about two people falling in love. They were about two families making an investment. But here's where the story gets complicated, because even in a world where marriage was a business contract, love found a way, and the oldest love story ever written down is also a marriage story, Inanna and Dumuzi. Inanna was the queen of heaven, the most powerful goddess in the Sumerian pantheon. Dumuzi was a shepherd king. Their courtship was recorded on clay tablets around 2000 BCE, and it is shockingly intimate. He put his hand in her hand, he put his hand to her heart. Sweet is the sleep of hand to hand, sweeter still the sleep of heart to heart. This is not a business contract. This is desire. This is choice. And yet even this love story is woven with politics. Inanna's marriage to Dumuzi legitimized his kingship. The union of two people was also the union of divine authority and earthly power. Love and politics inseparable from the very beginning. While Mesopotamia was carving marriage into law, ancient Egypt was taking a softer approach. The Egyptians did not even have a word for wedding. A marriage began when a woman moved her belongings into a man's house. That was it. No ceremony required, no priest necessary. But that does not mean it was casual. Marriage contracts were common, especially among anyone who was not desperately poor. These contracts specified the bride price, what the wife would receive if divorced, and what property she brought into the marriage. And here is something remarkable. Ancient Egyptian wives could own property. They could conduct business. They had legal rights that many women in later civilizations would lose. The instructions of Ani, an ancient Egyptian wisdom text, advises young men, do not control your wife in her house when you know she is efficient. Let your eye observe in silence. Then you recognize her skill. This is respect. This is partnership, and it is nearly 4,000 years old. Somewhere in ancient Egypt, another tradition began. The ring. Not gold at first. Woven reeds, leather, a circle with no end, representing eternal life and love. Its opening, a gateway to worlds unknown. The Egyptians saw the ring as a powerful symbol, and from Egypt it spread, to Greece, where rings were given to lovers bearing images of Eros, to Rome, where the fede ring depicted two hands clasped together. The Romans linked the ring to marriage in a way the Egyptians had not, and they placed it on the fourth finger of the left hand. They believed a vein ran from that finger directly to the heart, the vena amoris, the vein of love. It is not true anatomically, but it is true in every way that matters. On the other side of the world, another civilization was formalizing marriage with staggering precision. During the Zhou dynasty, from 1046 to 256 BCE, China developed the 6 etiquettes, 6 steps that had to be followed exactly for a marriage to be valid. First, the proposal. The groom's family sent a matchmaker to the bride's family with gifts: geese, mandarin ducks, fish, deer, each carrying auspicious meaning. Second, asking the name. The matchmaker inquired about the bride's birth date and hour. Third, divination. The families consulted fortune tellers to ensure the couple's destinies were compatible. If the signs were bad, the marriage could not proceed. Fourth, the betrothal gifts, formal presents that established the engagement. Fifth, choosing the date, another consultation with diviners to select the most fortunate day. And sixth, the wedding ceremony itself. The groom fetched the bride and brought her to his ancestral home. But even after the wedding, the marriage was not fully complete. 3 months later, the bride had to perform ancestor worship. Only then was she formally recognized as a member of her husband's clan. This was not a union between two individuals. It was a merger between two lineages, supervised by the state, managed by matchmakers, blessed by ancestors, and governed by the belief that marriage was made in heaven. So why did marriage begin? If you ask the biologist, they will say it began with grandmothering, with mate guarding, with the simple need to keep children alive. If you ask the anthropologist, they will say it began with alliances, with the exchange of women between tribes, with the need to prevent violence through kinship. If you ask the historian, they will point to Mesopotamia, to the clay tablets, to the first written contracts. And if you ask the poet, they will tell you about Inanna and Dumuzi, about hands clasped in the dark, about the sleep of heart to heart. They are all correct. Marriage did not have one origin. It had many, and each origin layered on top of the last. The biological need for pair bonding, the social need for alliances, the economic need for contracts, and somewhere in the gaps between all of these necessities, the emotional need for permanence. For most of history, marriage was not about love. It was about children, land, and social order. The idea that two people should marry because they feel a powerful emotional connection is a surprisingly recent invention. For the Sumerians, love was measuring land. For the Babylonians, a wife was an investment. For the Zhou Chinese, marriage was a cosmic arrangement decreed by heaven. But in every civilization, there were exceptions. The Egyptian love poems, the Inanna hymns, the letters between King Zimri-Lim of Mari and his wife Shiptu, filled with genuine affection. A Sumerian proverb describes a husband boasting that his wife has borne him 8 sons and is still eager to make love. An elderly Sumerian couple, carved into a single piece of gypsum around 2700 BCE, sits side by side, his arm around her shoulder, their hands clasped, their large eyes looking straight ahead to the future, their aged hearts remembering the past. This is not a contract. This is a life. So what was the first marriage really? Was it the first pair bond, formed 2 million years ago when a male decided to guard one female instead of fighting for many? Was it the first public recognition of a union when a tribe witnessed 2 people choose each other? Was it the first clay tablet in Mesopotamia making marriage a legal contract? Or was it the first time someone looked at another person and felt something so powerful that they needed a word for it? The truth is, marriage was all of these things, and none of them alone. It evolved, like language, like fire, like the tools we hold in our hands. It began as a solution to a problem, and it became something we could not imagine living without. Today, when 2 people stand before each other and make a promise, they are participating in one of the oldest human traditions, a tradition that predates nations, religions, and written history. They are doing something that our ancestors did, in one form or another, for hundreds of thousands of years. Choosing, committing, building something that lasts longer than a season. Think about this. Before marriage existed, No one had ever been betrayed by a promise. No one had ever been left at an altar. No one had ever worn a ring. No one had ever said the words, "Till death do us part." But also, no one had ever known the security of someone choosing them every single day. No one had ever built a home, knowing someone would be there when they returned. No one had ever grown old beside the same face. The first marriage was not perfect. It was probably not even voluntary. But it was the first time humans looked at the chaos of nature and said, "No, we will make our own rules. We will bind ourselves to each other, and we will ask our community to hold us to it." That act of rebellion against the wild is what built civilization. Every treaty between nations echoes the first marriage contract. Every alliance between families repeats the first exchange of a bride. Every promise we make to another person carries the weight of the first promise ever made, and yet marriage remains a question, not a fact. Because for all its history, for all its laws and traditions, marriage at its core is still a choice made in a world where choices are hard. Every marriage is an experiment. Every wedding is a hypothesis. Every couple who stays together is testing whether two people can build something that outlasts their own mortality. The first humans who married did not know what they were starting. They were solving a problem, feeding children, securing land, preventing war. But in solving those problems, they created something no one had planned. A container for love, a structure for loyalty, a frame around the most chaotic and beautiful emotion humans have ever felt. And every time someone says "I do," they are not just agreeing to a contract. They are adding another layer to the oldest story we have, the story of two people who looked at each other across the fire, across the field, across the millennia, and decided that the future would be better if they faced it together. The first marriage was not recorded. There was no scribe, no tablet, no witness list. Just two humans, somewhere in the long dark of prehistory, who stopped moving long enough to build something together. And a tribe that decided this mattered, that this bond was worth protecting, worth naming, worth enforcing. From that unrecorded moment, everything else followed. Cities, laws, inheritance, family names, the very idea that we belong to each other. So the next time you see a ring on someone's finger, remember, you are looking at the end of a chain that stretches back 2 million years. To a grandmother feeding a grandchild, to a male guarding a female from his rivals, to a Sumerian father signing a clay contract, to an Egyptian couple with no ceremony, just a shared home, to a Chinese matchmaker carrying a goose, to a Nana calling for the bed that rejoices the heart, and to two stick figures in the dust, holding hands in the dark, wondering if tomorrow would come. It did, and they are still holding on. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, consider what you are holding on to and who is holding on to you. Because the first marriage was not the last, it was just the first. And every promise made since then is part of the same story. Your story.